Thank you for tuning in to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Kira.
Okay, so Kira, in today's episode, I wanted to propose a scenario for you, right?
Okay, what is the scenario?
Why don't we play a 4-player FPS game?
Okay.
First-person shooter, for those of you who don't know.
Okay.
So, first, pick your character, Kira, okay? Do you want to be the big, strong guy that can push anything out of his way, but isn't really fast? Or, your second option, do you want to pick the quick, stealthy guy? No one really knows his name, but he's always able to hunt down his prey. Okay? Or, do you want to choose the kind of average guy who's able to kind of smooth talk his way through any situation? Or, do you want to play as the girl?
I will play as the girl.
Do you understand the problem and the situation I just illustrated for you? It basically describes almost every 4-player FPS game.
Oh, trust me, I know, because I often want to play as a girl. So, yeah.
So this is the trope that we're talking today. We call it 4-player tropes, featuring the girl.
Mm-hmm. Like, every 4-player game has 3 male characters and 1 girl. And the way you describe the male characters is often right.
Well, while this can be in any game, it tends to be in first-person shooter games.
Oh, definitely. It tends to be in there more often than others. And some just general 4-player co-op games even fall into this trope.
I mean, you'd be surprised how many 4-player first-person shooter games don't even have a female option.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yes. Now, some do, but oftentimes, whenever you have a game that has preset made characters, like they've crafted 4 characters, one of them is just the girl.
Oh, definitely. And there's no variety.
Well, the problem with this, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
In the real world, gender ratio is almost completely 50-50.
Exactly. So you would think that if the game was representing real world gender ratios, 2 girls, 2 guys.
And basically any country, no matter where you live. Mm-hmm. And I understand there's slight discrepancies of that. Sometimes it's like 40-something, 50-something, but it's almost a 50-50 split. Mm-hmm. There's really no excuse for it.
Exactly, because chances are, even if you don't think so, it could be up to 50% of players playing your game are female.
Actually, I said there's no excuse for it, but some people do try to make excuses.
Oh,
so
yeah, definitely.
So, like, one excuse I heard that I felt kind of works is situations where there's soldiers that are being played as, and there's soldiers in the past. Like, for example, like you might have, like, soldiers during World War II or something.
Yeah, I feel like that's fair because most infantry was male, but you have to admit that there were some females around the area, at least, like... Yeah, on the front lines, either being nurses or other things.
Right. I mean, you could make the argument that they wouldn't be the ones with the guns. So I feel like that argument does technically work. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's a weak argument, and it's a disappointment.
And they only turn to that argument for an excuse.
I mean, look how many times in history, there have been many times, I don't have the numbers on me, but there have been many times where women dressed up as men.
Exactly, so that they could fight. Mm-hmm. And a fictional version of that is like Mulan. It's like that actually happened in history sometimes.
Well, yeah, Mulan was actually based off of a legendary figure from China, though.
Exactly. So it happened. We have proof that it happened.
So I mean, at the very least, if you're going to make a bunch of soldier characters, how come in the entire history of video games there has never been that female pretending to be a male soldier?
Mm-hmm. That would be a really interesting character.
It's just always that tough soldier. Anyway, so we've been rambling on about how we feel about these things, but let's give you the statistics, the facts. So we went through and we tried to clone through a whole bunch of examples of 4-player FPS games that fell into this situation. Now, we went ahead and we eliminated FPS 4-player games that we could think of that simply just didn't have females. There's so many of them. Some of them are games where just like everyone plays as male grunt A. So here's some examples that we have. Here, why don't we switch off, okay? Okay, so the first game is Left 4 Dead that we have on our list, where you play as Francis, Bill, Lewis, or the girl, Zoe.
And I also want to mention that often in these 4-player tropes, there's one non-white male, and then the other 2 are white, and then there's one girl.
That actually is a very typical thing. Like you have essentially the girl, and then you also have the ethnic minority.
Yes.
But that's not always what happens. The girl thing to me seems much more prevalent.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But what you're talking does happen too.
Yeah, this is an example of it because Lewis is a black guy. And Francis and Bill are both white, and Zoe's the girl.
I think Zoe is non-Caucasian, though.
She might be Latina, but I don't remember.
I don't actually remember what she looks like.
Yeah.
But, okay, so next game.
Left 4 Dead 2, which, again, offends in that the characters are Rochelle, Coach, Ellis, and Nick. And
Rochelle being the girl.
Yes, and to be fair, she is a black woman at least, so I might
have gotten her mixed up with Zoe. Mm-hmm. Anyway, next one is Borderlands, where you can play as the hunter, the soldier, the berserker, or the siren. Not even just the girl, the siren. Now, I understand the siren plays a thematic role within the story and the narrative, but that doesn't mean literally all girls are sirens. Mm-hmm. So why is the only girl you can play as a siren?
Yeah, exactly.
And not only that, but the other 3 guys are all muscular.
Oh, yes.
Hyper masculine. Mm-hmm. So this was actually the game I had in my mind when I was telling you the scenario at the top of the podcast.
Borderlands 2, we have again the siren, the gunzerker, the commando, and the assassin.
They did try to make up for it with the DLC.
The DLC characters are the Necromancer, which is a female, and the Psycho, which is male.
The Necromancer being literally, so this is the 4th, 8th, 9th. This is the 9th playable character in the Borderlands franchise, and we finally got a female who was not inherently a siren. Mm-hmm. So we got a female that was literally not known or not called after a word that is meant for promiscuity.
Yeah, exactly.
And instead, she's known by her intelligence.
Yes, personally, I loved playing as the Necromancer. So, yeah.
Her death trap was awesome.
Yes.
Although the Psycho was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So then you have Borderlands, the pre-sequel. Now, this one is actually not an offender, but we wanted to put it on here for complete clarity. It seems like some of the more recent games, the developers have actually been more on the ball with this, which is great. Hopefully just another sign that society is always ever slightly getting better. Because in this game, they had the Enforcer, Claptrap, who identifies as male, and then they had the Gladiator and Lawbringer, both of which were female. Mm-hmm. And so that's a 1-to-1 gender ratio, just like the real world.
And they also, in the DLC, they kept that ratio by adding Jack, which is the guy, and then Oriella, which is a female.
Keeping that 1-to-1 gender ratio. Mm-hmm. So I really commend them on finally fixing that problem. It only took 2 games to do it.
Yes. 3, and the Borderlands, the pre-sequel, had much more improvements over the original games in that area.
Right. Okay, but the next examples we have, Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Call of Duty is egregious. They are the biggest offenders of this concept.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Now, we can't really talk about single player or multiplayer when it comes to Call of Duty, because in single player, you control a single guy, and then in multiplayer, pretty much everyone is male grunt A. Now, they did eventually allow the option of being a female in the more recent Call of Duty games.
Yeah, in the multiplayer.
Right. But all Call of Duty games ever since World at War, which was the 5th Call of Duty game, were we on like 12 now? But they've had a bonus mode or a bonus zombies mode.
Yes, where you have a team of 4 players fighting zombies.
Yeah, in a very Left 4 Dead kind of style.
And the 4 characters
are always either all men or they have one woman, with maybe a few exceptions. Mm-hmm. So we want to go over those as well. Mm-hmm. So in Call of Duty Black Ops Zombies, in the level Call of the Dead, they had a bunch of actors. You could play as Robert Englund, Danny Trejo, Michael Rooker, or the girl, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Exactly. There's one female.
It was a good choice of a female.
Yes, I agree.
But why was there only one?
Yeah.
Or I wonder, you could probably even say that could be related to the amount of popular female actresses within the horror genre.
Oh, yeah. You know what? You're right.
Treyarch could probably say, like, well, we were in a bind. It's Hollywood's problem, not ours.
Yeah, because that specific level, Call of the Dead, was about a horror movie being filmed, for those who don't know. So they chose 4 horror movie actors as characters.
I mean, this illustrates how in a lot of these 4-player games, you might have an excuse. You might the World War II soldier one we talked about, or this one with the actors. You might be able to have an excuse for why you don't have an equal gender ratio, but when you look at the corroborating evidence and you just look at everything across the board, the disparity you see is really telling.
Oh yes, definitely.
Because I can understand. It's like having an excuse for losing your homework. Maybe you had a legitimate excuse,
but that doesn't.
But then if you have 50 of them, it starts to look pretty suspicious.
Oh yeah.
Now, if all 50 of them were done by different students, maybe there's a rampaging dog on the loose eating everyone's homework. The thing to realize is that there's a problem.
Oh, yeah. There is a problem.
Anyway, more examples. You want to go to the next one?
Yeah. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 Zombies had a level where you could play as Marlton Johnson, Samuel Stuhlinger, Russman, and the girl, Misty.
Yeah, just called Misty. Oh, fun fact, by the way, all of her underwear was visible.
Yeah, she was supposed to be the typical country bunkin' woman, so she was wearing, like, Daisy Dukes and a tied shirt.
Well, see, in this one, they were all meant to be stereotypes. You have, the stereotypical nerd, the stereotypical conspiracy theorist, the stereotypical woman, and then the stereotypical minority.
Yeah.
Elderly minority. He was older. But so, yeah, problematic, to say the least. Next game is Black Ops 3 Zombies. It was in the 1940s. They had Jack Vincent, Floyd Campbell, Nero Blackstone, and Jessica Rose, which just so happened to be a burlesque dancer.
Oh, yeah, that was the level where they were like Hollywood.
Yep.
Like they're famous people. Wow.
Again, I can kind of see the time period taking a role in here.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be like different.
But considering
careers.
all 4 of the characters have different vocations, I find it very hard to believe you couldn't pick another vocation that had a woman in it.
Why couldn't you pick like the 1940s singers who sang in lounges?
Or like jazz tunes.
Or,
Yeah.
Or maybe even just an actress instead of a burlesque dancer.
Well, her thing is she wanted to be an actress, but yeah, you could have had that be 2 different characters.
All right, Advanced Warfare Zombies. Oz, Jim Decker, Khan, and the girl, Lilith Swan.
It should be noted, though, in some of the levels, they replaced Oz with Lennox. So really, there were 5 characters. Which only one was a girl?
I don't even know who Lennox is. I don't know any of these characters.
It was Advanced Warfare. No one does. I'm kidding. Okay, so next example we have is Infinite Warfare and their zombies levels. So they had Andre Wright, Poindexter Zitterman, AJ, and then the girl, Sally Simpson, which at least in the first level was a stereotypical like 80s kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then they even had secret Easter egg characters, Pam Grier, Elvira, David Hasselhoff, Willard Wyler, Kevin Smith. 2 out of 5 of these were girls. So still, the majority of their characters were men. Now, if you don't mind, I wanted to also talk about the next one.
Okay.
The World War II Zombies. This is the most recent Call of Duty, I think, that came out.
Oh, really? Is it?
I think so. Because for the first time ever, they had an equal gender ratio. Olivia Durant, Mary Fisher versus Drosten Hind, Jefferson Potts. So they had 2 and 2.
That is actually really good.
Yeah, it took 12 Call of Duty games.
Wow.
Or 6, I don't know, but...
Keep in mind, this is for the fact that, like, the first couple Call of Duty zombies and continuing, they do have levels where there literally are just 4 men.
Yes, and that is...
Of different nationalities.
At least in the beginning, that was the majority of the case. We have a few other games that we wanted to put on here. We have Warhammer Vermintide.
I've dabbled in this game. It's basically like Left 4 Dead 2 in the style of play where you have 4-player co-op killing a bunch of hordes of enemies, and except it has a fantasy theme, and there's loot and equipment and stuff like that that has more of a medieval fantasy theme.
Well, the characters for that one, they're
the Bright Wizard and the Way Watcher, which are the 2 women, And then they have the Witch Hunter, the Dwarf Ranger, and the Empire Soldier. So they have 2 women out of 5 characters.
Yeah, so this one doesn't quite fit the trope exactly, but it's kind of in the same vein. The reason being that this one's I consider this one to be acceptable as opposed to offensive like the other ones.
Yeah, because at least there are 2 female options instead of just 1.
Yes, and in a game of 5, you're going to have an odd number. 3
well, there were
2.
5 classes. There's still only 4 players, I believe. I don't know that much about the game.
There's 5 choices. So you had to go one way or the other. But the reason I still wanted to put it on here is even if you're like, okay, we had 5 classes, so naturally it would have to be either 2 guys and 3 girls or 3 girls and 2 guys. But why is it always that the larger number is the one with the men, the male characters? The female ones always get the short end of the stick.
Yeah, that always happens.
Be that way.
Yes.
And then even kid games aren't excused from this. Remember Super Mario Bros. 2? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You play as Mario, Luigi, Toad, or the girl, Peach.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And then they recently had Super Mario 3D World, which is a remake of that, where you could play as Mario, Luigi, Toad, or the girl, Peach. Although I do admit, you could unlock Rosalina later in the game. So that was something, I guess.
They added another female character.
Oh, I forgot to mention, they replaced Toad with Blue Toad. That means many things. So all of these examples, these are all the examples we thought of. I actually crunched the numbers on them. And in the real world, you have a 50% chance of getting a female and a 50% chance of getting a male. Almost 50, right? In any situation. You give me a random set of 4 characters. Statistically, the average would be 2 and 2. It wouldn't always work out that way, but that would be the average. Within the examples of all the examples that we could think of, when you exclude the male-only games, so we're going to assume that you're only going to even consider ones that have girls at all.
Yeah, which is a big consideration.
Still, only 31.55% of them will be female.
Yeah.
That is less than a third. As in, that's basically 1 in 4, with occasional games doing 2 and 4.
Yeah, that's really bad. And this is literally just the games that we can even find that include a female character at all. So
we also wanted to point out that there's many times, not just in games, where this happens. Like there's many times in media where you'll have a group of characters, but then you have the girl.
Like Fantastic Four, there's
the Invisible Woman.
Yeah, the Invisible Woman. She's the only girl.
And then the Justice League, there's just Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah.
With the core Justice League. I mean, I get there's like spin-offs and extra members and whatnot, but in the core Justice League.
Guardians of the Galaxy. What's her name? Gamora?
I actually don't know. She's green. I do remember that.
But the other 3 characters are males. Or actually, not even the other 3 characters, because there's...
Even the tree and the raccoon are male.
Yes, exactly.
The tree.
Yes.
Which would technically be both genders. Because that's how trees work.
It identifies as male.
Well,
I'm pretty sure.
I get that's Groot's choice. Oh, actually, it only says I am Groot. Is that even?
I don't know.
What is Groot? Is that like a masculine name in their language?
You know what? I think Rocket pushed his gender onto Groot.
Yeah, you know what, Rocket? Maybe you should back off. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm kidding too.
Let Groot be what he wants, or she.
Yeah.
Okay, but other examples. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say, Green Woman, technically not racist. Technically, kinda.
In the we haven't seen the second season, but in the first season of Stranger Things, there is a group of young boys, and the group is technically 4 of them, but later on they acquire a girl, and one of the boys is missing. So it's 3 boys and a girl. They
even have a Dungeons and Dragons game going on. So they're literally playing a 3-player game, and then they add a 4th person to their posse who's a female. Although then their game takes on real life proportions.
Yep.
And don't yell at us for not seeing the second season yet. We're getting around to it.
Eventually.
The Avengers. I think everyone will just kind of groan at that.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the core Avengers movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I understand there's a second team of Avengers, and then with Infinity War, there's just all all the Marvel guys coming together, right?
Yes, but
in the core group, that is Thor, the Hulk, Iron Man,
Hawkeye,
yes. Always forget about him. Everyone does. And then Black Widow. It's 5 of them, right?
Yes,
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, Black Widow being the only one to not have a movie aside from Hawkeye.
Wait, what about Captain America and Falcon? Does he count?
Falcon's part of the secondary group. Okay. But yeah, Captain America, so there's 6.
Mm-hmm.
Is Hawkeye really considered one of the main ones, though? If you don't consider him, Black Widow is literally the only one who hasn't had a movie.
Yes.
So, which is just particularly noticeable when she's the only female in the cast.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And, later on in, like, the Age of Ultron, they add the witch, what's her name? Scarlet?
Oh, yeah, the Scarlet Witch.
Yes, but then she comes with her brother, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but, yeah. There's just one more girl, and then he add in one more male as well.
And nearly all of the other female characters are essentially the girlfriends that the rest of the Avengers rescue.
Oh, yes. That is also true. Although, to be fair, Pepper gains powers that Tony doesn't even have.
Wait, she does?
It's...
When?
Oh, sorry, movie? Spoilers.
Spoilers, yeah. Which movie?
One of the Iron Man movies.
3?
I think so.
Okay.
It's hard to keep that universe straight. This is a show that I've watched a couple episodes of called New Girl, and there are 3 male roommates, and then the main character is a woman who moves in with them, and the whole premise of the show is that, oh my god, there's this new woman in a group of 3 men moving in with them, and it's just ridiculous. And also, she's supposed to be, the quirky girl. And also, there's Pirates of the Caribbean, which only has 1 main female character.
They do at least make her a powerful one.
Yes, I admit that.
Although, the one that had the goddess? I don't want to say her name for fear of spoilering, but there is a female character who shows up as a goddess. And then the moment that she's supposed to be helpful to their plan, she ends up just... So, yeah, that other than her, the one main female character, the one female pirate is, she's just one. There's just one.
Mm-hmm. And also, to be fair, she comes with a boyfriend that is, that tries to get her to stay home. So, yeah.
And for the record, we're excluding background characters that you just don't really ever get to find out who they are.
Mm-hmm. Because
I'm sure there were probably background cameos.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay.
Anyway. So those are non-game examples as well. So we've given plenty of examples about this trope. We wanted to explain how this trope is really part of a bigger problem. We want to talk about why this matters. Okay?
Personally, this matters a lot to me because I'm a girl and I like to play as a girl in my games that I play. And so that is a direct problem for me when I only have one option, or even a lot of the time, I just have to play as a guy if I want to play the game.
I mean, that's what games are really supposed to be. Games are different from all other media because they are interactive. But like I said, this problem isn't limited to games. Even when you're watching a movie, which superhero do you empathize with? Well, do you empathize with the muscles that are on all the men? Or do you empathize with the one girl?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And it doesn't have to work that way. You could have a muscular girl. I mean, that happens in media sometimes, but it doesn't seem to be portrayed nearly as often.
To be fair, Black Widow is a badass, and she's awesome. So.
Right, but she has a more slender figure.
Yeah, true.
This is really emblematic of female representation in media. Now, if any of you guys that don't agree with this are still listening by this point, the reason that we wanted to talk about this is because everyone should be able to feel like they can be represented in a video game or media. Especially
since they have to control the character and interact with the media. So it's really like there's a real disconnect when you don't get to play someone that you identify with.
And character creation systems are really good at being able to do that. But sometimes people don't want to play as themselves. Sometimes people want to choose from a selection of really well-made characters. But when all those characters, like Borderlands, like all of these ones, when these characters are catered towards a specific male-dominated audience, it further leaves out the females. If you think you only have a male audience, so you start catering more to that audience, you're like doubling down on it and removing the chance of females being able to personally relate to some of these characters.
Not that that's true. There's a large female audience playing video games, so cater to them.
It's alienating them though to other games.
Yeah, it is alienating female players because we just don't have as many options.
And it's not that females feel like they have to play. I mean, if you don't mind me saying so, I mean, I am male, so...
No, I sometimes, I don't always feel that I have to play as a girl in games. But, if there's an established story with the male character and, okay, you're playing as this male character for a reason, I don't have a problem with that.
It's just about the ability to choose, to have the option.
Yes.
And it doesn't actually have to even be a zero-sum game. You can have 5 characters like Vermintide did. I felt what Vermintide did was acceptable. But it's just that it always seems that one gender gets left out, and that gender is always female.
Mm-hmm. And it's, honestly, I believe that it's part of this misconception that women just don't play games. And that's not true.
I mean, one thing I think is important is... One reason that I think they should make a 1-to-1 gender ratio to be more representative of real life, especially if you're trying to make a game look gritty and realistic and everything, then have a realistic gender ratio, have an equal number of females to your males. And even if your game, like your Call of Duty, you do that, right? Even if your game does have a dominant male audience, a majority male audience, some men would probably like playing as women.
That's
like, you
true too.
Don't have to be a female to appreciate the choice.
Yeah, that's very true.
People of all genders would be able to appreciate gender equality. Mm-hmm. And I want to also argue against the idea of it being a zero-sum game, and that we don't have to go back and change these problematic games. No. We can keep this in mind for the future.
Yeah, I completely agree.
If game developers would take this advice, if the executives forcing them to do things would take this advice, in the future, they could probably just design more interesting characters. Having 2 females in the next game does not mean that there's going to be 1 male that you're going to be missing out on.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because there's no promise that, like, you were going to get male characters, but now you're only going to get female, so you're losing the males you would have gotten.
That doesn't happen. Yeah. You could just make it equal.
Mm-hmm. That's like having a female child and saying, like, the male we missed out on.
To be fair, that actually was a thing in history.
A ridiculous thing.
I agree. It was ridiculous.
Because what you really should focus on is, like, how grateful that you are for the female. Mm-hmm. We're kind of rambling at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so... Proof, citation, sources. We were talking about how this is a bigger problem that happens. So we said this happens in media, but we're specifically talking about this trope in video games. While the 4-player trope is a problem, we wanted to talk about how even in single player, like not even just single player games, but I went through the data of the most popular games ever, like the highest selling games, and I decided I want to go through them and figure out which ones allow you to play as only male characters, which ones allow you to play as only female, which ones don't care about the gender of the player, and then which ones give you the option of both. Because I wanted to see how it stacked up, to be able to see if I could just directly do the statistical information myself, just look at the data and see if this was a trend that was happening. Because, what do they say, the devil's in the data? So this is what I came up with. In the top 50 most popular video games, popular is a relative word, the highest grossing video games of all time. So like the top ones are Tetris, Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto 5, Wii Sports, and Mario Bros. At this time anyway. 16% of them do not care about your gender. 42% give you an option of both. These are great. That's fine. Like, if a game doesn't care about your gender, then who cares?
Yeah, exactly. And if just a game gives you the option of playing as female, that's great too.
Yes.
Give you the option of playing either gender.
But let's look at these other numbers. 42% of the top 50 games exclusively only allow you to play as a man.
Yeah, that's equal to the amount of games that let you play as both a male and female.
Yeah, as many will give you the option, as many will not do that.
Yeah.
And you want to know how many were exclusively female within the top 50?
None.
0.
No top 50 games sold of all time allow you to play as exclusively female.
If you can play as a female, that was only as an option to the male.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this data speaks volumes. That you have literally 0 compared to 42. 0% female only, 42% male only. So, you know, if we were to take out the 16% none and the 42% both, and we just had the chart of male exclusive, female exclusive, the chart would be a male circle.
Yeah.
Because there would be 0 female.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's like, I'd be okay if those 42% that only let you play as male was at least both let you play as both a male or a female. Or if it's central to your story that you're playing as a male and can only play as a male, then there should be equally amount of stories where you can only play as a female.
Yeah, I mean, the majority, if it was both of them, that would be acceptable. I would be okay with that. But
it's literally equal to the amount that you can play as both.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that you'll have some games where there's many games where there's only one playable character. So you have to choose. And that's understandable on a per game basis.
Yeah,
but when you look at the numbers, it's like, wow. When it comes to picking a relatable main character, kids really seem to like their middle-aged Caucasian men. You know, you got Jack, Booker, the Far Cry guy.
Nathan Drake from Uncharted.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the guy's name in Infamous?
Cole.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go on. I saw an image like where they literally had a collage of all their faces. And it's like, wow, kids really like their middle-aged Caucasian guys. Because, I mean, games are supposed to be played by everyone. And our world is just so diverse, you know? Mm-hmm. So it feels really limiting. It feels like we're telling the same stories over and over again. I mean, imagine all the other perspectives that we don't get to see, all the other stories, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think that's one reason why games that do have ethnic diversity oftentimes are really popular.
Because more people can see themselves in it and identify with it.
And it's not just games. I mean, I know this might be a little tangential to bring up, but the Black Panther movie blew everyone away because it tapped an untapped market. Exactly.
Black children, for the first time, could see on the screen an incredible superhero, a king that, you know, they could identify with and look up to.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with someone telling them, like, they asked me how Black Panther was, and I told them it's one of the best Marvel movies ever, which is, in my honest opinion. And you know what they said?
What?
Really? Now, I would like to believe that was just skepticism of the fact that he's a B-rated comic book hero. But I feel like it was something more.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So, yeah, I guess that's all I had to really say about the female characters in the top 50 games. But I thought maybe we've gotten better about this. The top 50 games are games of all time, so that spans, you know, the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. So what if instead we just looked at the data from more recent games? So I decided to look at the data from E3, which you could argue is one of the biggest game advertising event of the year, where they advertise all the big games that are going to come out for that year. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't have the data from 2018. So we got the next best thing. We have the data from 2017. And so we took every game that was released, every trailer for games that was released at E3 2017 and decided, okay, let's take a look at this and see if the information is any different, okay? Mm-hmm. There were a lot of character customization ones, which inherently make a game go under both.
Yeah, which means you can play as male or female.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So in this chart, by the way, I want to post these charts so our listeners can see them. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that yet, being our first episode, but look at the website or under the description or logical places. Maybe you'll find the chart. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Yeah.
So none has 12.77%.
Of you play as no gender.
Yeah, like the gender is not important to the game. Like, it doesn't care. Mm-hmm. Like, the player has no discernible gender. 46.81% are both. The game clearly gives you options to play as either male or female.
Which is a good percentage. It was more than the last chart.
Exactly. 30.85% are male exclusive. You can only play as men. Many of these games were not just like, oh, you only have one character and it happens to be a man. Many of these games actually had multiple options for characters, but they were all men.
Yeah.
I also want to point out, though, some of these games that we put under both, they had like multiple options. Like there were several games in here that I cataloged where they had multiple options for men and literally just one option for women. There was one female option.
There was the girl.
Yeah, I don't remember which one. There was one Call of Duty game where in the campaign, it was like all men except for like one woman that you play as.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had to put it under both, but it really felt like they were barely making it.
Yeah, they were falling under this trope.
It was one of the modern Call of Duties, which is more egregious because we have lots of women in the military right now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the percentages are. If we have less women, we'd have to look it up. So that's okay. Men, 30.85%. That's better than the 42% of the top 50 games, right?
Yeah, that's less than.
But the female, which didn't even register in the top 50, for E3 2017, 7.45% of the games were exclusively female.
Wow.
That's incredibly small. It is definitely better than the top 50. Definitely. I mean, we're glad to have some.
Yes. I feel like it's slowly getting better, inch by inch. Because, I mean, like 46.81% you could play as either male or female is not bad. But then you see that exclusively male games are 30.85% where you play as exclusively male. And then where you play as exclusively female, 7.45%. Yeah, and just to get you an idea of the numbers, that means that there are only 7 games in the entirety of E3 where you could play as exclusively female.
I think we should shout them out.
What?
The games.
Oh, the games? Yeah,
so
sure.
We had Beyond Good and Evil 2. You did have male partners, but the main character is female. Also, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, Japanese indie game. And then
Life is Strange Before the Storm.
That's an amazing game. I can't wait to play the prequel.
That is the prequel.
Yeah. I played the main Life is Strange. Metroid: Samus Returns. This is a gimme.
Samus is a woman.
And then Star Child. I've never played that one. Never.
You play as a female.
And then Tacoma, which is the sequel to Gone Home.
You play as a female.
And Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I was really surprised that one lets you play as a female.
Yeah, I was too.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Progress. Yeah. I mean, it's not that you have to. It's just, the idea of, progressivism is to have equal representation. And that's really what all of this data just completely goes against.
Yeah, because if you're having almost 31% of games you can only play as a male, it's like, that's not good.
Now, you might have noticed, though, that we haven't actually added up to 100% yet.
Oh, really?
Because there were 2 games, so that's 2.13%, that had non-binary characters.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Because both games sound great. It sounds great, like, oh, you can play as a man or a woman, as if those are the only genders that exist.
Yeah, I feel like games are even worse about providing the option to play as non-binary.
See, that's the thing. People act like non-binary people don't exist, right?
Yes, that is.
And if we are so bad at representing women, a gender that most people agree exists, then how in the world are we going to represent the genders that a lot of people don't even acknowledge?
Yeah, you're completely right about that.
So the 2 games that had non-binary characters were Ori and the Will of the Wisp, because Ori was like a spirit that doesn't clearly define one way or the other.
Okay.
And Undertale.
which has a genderless child as the main character.
You play as Frisk or Chara. And some people interpret them as a male or a female, but the character itself is a fully fleshed out character, even if you don't ever talk, and but never identifies what gender they are.
Yeah, exactly. And I would like to say that there is one game that really lets you play as a binary character that has a non-binary character that has a bunch of options, and that's The Sims 4. The newest Sims 4 does have options for you to play as a non-binary character, and they only added that in a while after it even released.
Yeah, so that is definitely good. And the way they made it work was they actually made it as a gender as a culmination of factors. So you choose individual factors of your sim, and that determines what gender they are. And it doesn't have to line up strictly under what we perceive as male nor female. You can have someone that, pees standing up, but also get pregnant. Yep.
You had options for that.
So that's definitely progressive. And so we just wanted to also talk about what the 4-player trope, getting back to that, because we talked about how really this is emblematic of a bigger problem in the entertainment industry. But when it comes to specifically the 4-player tropes and the girl, we feel like this is just a very common example in one of the most prolific, camera structures of video games, the first-person shooter, that really is emblematic of this type of stereotyping that is prevalent throughout the industry.
Oh, yes, I completely agree.
And we wanted to praise some games. They may not be first-person shooters, but some 4-player games that actually give you a plethora of options, or at least a 1-to-1 gender ratio. So the two that I was able to think of were Overcooked and Don't Starve Together.
Oh, yeah, because you have a ton of options for characters.
Yes. I mean, they're 4-player games, but they allow you to choose.
I honestly cannot think of any.
I think Destiny actually allows you to choose male and female as well.
Does it?
Yeah.
But then in that case, it's both. And it's not a 4-player co-op game.
Actually, yes, it is. I don't know about 4-player, but it's definitely co-op.
Well, yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. I think I think you have as many players. I don't know. I've never played Destiny. I've just seen so much about it because they had a prolific marketing campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Splatoon, I know, gives you Splatoon 2, which just came out on the Switch, gives you a lot of options for characters, and you create your own character and you're on a team, so the gender ratios end up being pretty equal.
I mean, so many of these games, especially in the E3 list, had character customization systems where you just make your own character, and that's how they got onto the both list. But to me, that's not the same. That's not writing a good female characters. When you have these 4-player tropes, like the 4-player co-op FPS or not, they are pre-made characters, often with pre-made backstories. They tend to be really intricately crafted. I mean, the Borderlands characters look amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't like how hypermasculine some of them are, and I just don't like that almost all of them are men.
Yeah, I don't like that either, because I would like to play as a female with a more good background. It
just feels like an obvious detriment that didn't have to be there. And I mean, we really enjoyed playing Borderlands.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there were good aspects to it, but this was just something in particular that just felt like we kept coming up over and over and over again.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Oh, tell the listeners about how we decided to come up with this podcast topic as our first episode.
Okay, so we opened up Netflix to watch the show that we're watching right now, and there was an ad at the top for a show that showed 4 players. It was some kind of show or movie that was about video games.
Unfortunately, we don't remember what it was.
No, we
tried looking for it.
But we saw this ad, and it literally had the 4 main characters. There was 1 girl, 2 white guys, and 1 minority.
And it was literally about games. It was like some type of game simulation TV show.
Yeah, or something.
And they were all supposed to pose all cool, like, oh, we're going to the game. And I just look at it, and I'm like, you got the girl and the ethnic minority.
Yes, and the other 2 guys are white. And yeah, and we start talking about how like, oh, if this was representative, then there'd be at least 2 women. And also, you know, there would be not just one ethnic minority, but at least 2.
I mean, I think in the examples we gave, it's already worth pointing out that a lot of the time, even when you do get female representation, sometimes they're not, you don't find, you know, females that aren't also Caucasian.
Yeah, that's true.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, even when there is a female character, she's almost always white.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, when we saw that,
that ad
we just closed it. Like we did, like not going to watch the show immediately turned us away. And you know what? They lost profit because of that, because we didn't watch it.
Yeah.
And now when we wanted to actually go back and see it, or at least figure out what it was called just for the purpose of this podcast, we literally couldn't even find it because of just the piles and piles of what is Netflix.
Yes. And to be fair, we might have watched it because it was a show about video games, which doesn't happen often.
Yeah, I mean, that interests us. I mean, most game-related cinematography tends up to be terrible, but there have been a few times in more recent times that it seems like directors are getting better with it. Mm-hmm. I like Wreck-It Ralph.
Yes.
Wreck-It Ralph was awesome.
Yes, it was. Okay,
so I think this is a wrap for our first episode. Anything else you want to say about 4 players featuring the girl?
I'm just going to say that I hope in the future that video game developers choose to make female characters more often, because that would be great for me, a woman who plays video games regularly. Yeah, listeners, if you ever are making characters, make them diverse. Mm-hmm. In a world where people are diverse. I mean, you can't even, like, it's hard to argue, like, well, we don't want this to be diverse because that's not accurate. Because in the entirety of human civilization, it's been a 50-50 ratio of men to women. So if it's not accurate, you're designing your game to be that way. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, all 4-player characters are men because you're in a male bathroom. I get that you may be technically correct with that, but maybe you might want to broaden your scope a bit. Yeah. Because I don't know if that will be the most interesting game. Definitely not the most inclusive. Yeah, I really agree with you there. Because the only demographic you're going to get from that are people that want to see a bunch of men together in a bathroom. I'm not saying that demographic doesn't exist. I'm saying it's smaller. Careful. So, yeah. So that's our episode. So, how do you think we did? First podcast episode. Yay. Yay. Man, I hope this goes well. Yeah, me too. I mean, listeners, this is our first podcast episode. We hope it goes well. We really don't know where this is going to go. No. We are just hoping that we can stick around long enough to keep this going. Our plans are for this podcast to be once a week. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What else do you want to add on top of that? Well, we have ideas of topics we're going to talk about in the future. But we have a whole list. Oh, yes. We have a list. But, you know, we're just hoping this goes well. And and if any of you guys want to email us or ask us some questions, you contribute to the show, we might consider reading over it and addressing any mistakes that we made. I mean, it's largely an opinion-based podcast, so any mistakes we made, I mean, we'll be glad to keep in mind, and maybe any type of discussions or debates. No racism, please. Or prejudice. Yeah. But just contact us at our podcast page. You should be able to find our email from there. Oh, yes. And in case any of you were wondering about the relationship between Kira and I. Yeah. Because some people might be curious about our relationship. Yeah. We're apostle cues. And if you don't know what that means, go look it up.